Our focus is on personal empowerment, a commitment to well-being, and the motivation to achieve more than ever thought possible. We have another exceptional guest this week. Kendall Gammon is an author and sought-after keynote speaker who played an astonishing 15 years in the National Football League. Kendall attended Division II Pittsburgh State University, where he was a captain for the 1991 national champion Gorillas and was voted most inspirational by his teammates. He was a long snapper for the Pittsburgh Steelers, New Orleans Saints, and Kansas City Chiefs. He played in the 1995 Super Bowl and 2005 Pro Bowl. And Kansas City Chiefs fans know him for his many years as a game color analyst for the Chiefs Radio Network broadcast team. Kendall Gammon has written 2 books, Life's a Snap, Building on the Past to Improve Your Future, and Game Plan, Leadership Lessons from the Best of the NFL. And believe it or not, he juggles bowling balls. Kendall Gammon, welcome to Next Steps Forward.
It's awesome. Great to be here, Chris.
Thanks for your time. I've really been looking for this conversation, just fascinating career and background, so excited to have you here. So let's start off, Kendall. You went to Pittsburgh State, and for people like myself on the East Coast, that's Pittsburgh without an H, Kansas.
Yep.
Why'd you choose Pittsburgh State, or did it choose you?
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? Honestly, I wanted to play basketball coming out of high school, but that wasn't going to get me to the pro level. You know, as a lot of kids dream, you want to play something pro. And football just kind of made sense. I was somewhat accomplished there as well. Really, I didn't get any full scholarship offers from Division I. They said they invited me to walk on, but they said I was not aggressive enough, and they were correct, and I was probably soft as well. So Division II, Pittsburgh State, that and one other school were the only 2 that offered me, and even that was a partial scholarship, but it worked out.
Clearly, it worked out. The Gorillas won the national championship when you were there. You were also a team captain your last 2 years, and again, you were voted most inspirational player your senior year. Looking back, which one of those accomplishments means the most to you and why?
Yeah, definitely the most inspirational. I think as an athlete, if you go to a college to play football or play a sport, you're probably pretty well accomplished in high school, and you know that maybe you're going to get some awards or whatever. And I got some awards at Pitt State also, as far as All League 3 years, All American. But I'd never even thought about most inspirational. Didn't even know there was an award. And what I realized was just my will to win and how unbelievably competitive I was and trying to motivate the team as well to win, evidently shone through to the players to actually elect that. And I mean, I was shocked when that happened.
You talk about motivating the team. Being a leader and motivating people, was that just something you inherently did? Was this a natural skill? Did you really focus on it?
I think it was somewhat natural to a degree. I think sometimes when you're fairly accomplished and you love what you're doing, you do take it into your own hands. I think that's what I did for the one reason, which is I simply wanted to win. I didn't care about the accolades, whether I was getting accolades or not. I did at times. Sometimes I got looked over, but I just simply wanted to win, that competitive spirit. And I think that's something that moves all of us in some direction.
Yeah, no question. So you go from Pittsburgh, Kansas to Pittsburgh with an H, Pennsylvania, when the NFL's Pittsburgh Steelers drafted you. You were taken in the late rounds, so you weren't a first-round draft pick, but you also weren't Mr. Irrelevant, the last man drafted. What's the feeling when a kid goes to Pittsburgh State and gets drafted in the NFL?
You know what? It was not a dream come true. It was an opportunity come true because I hadn't made it in there, but at least I had that opportunity. And it was interesting. 11th round pick, 291st person taken. So right away feeling really good about myself. But the fact is, it was the mindset that I chose to approach it with, which is I had come out of the combine, which is kind of the tryout for the colleges. And I'd been the first long snapper invited to a combine as well. As the number 1 long snapper in the nation. So what that got me was, as I said, 291st person taken. But, in life, really all you can ask for is opportunities and then decide to go after it to your best efforts. And if you fail and you tried, then at least you feel it. There's the pain, there's physical pain, and there's the pain of the regret. And I didn't want to have pain of regret. So I literally changed my whole schedule, getting ready for the draft and everything. And yeah, I wasn't Mr. Irrelevant, but I wasn't far off either.
So you mentioned 291st draft pick, taken the 11th round, but you weren't exactly drafted by the Steelers, were you? Even though you went to the team.
No, I wasn't. It's interesting. I didn't learn this until I'm not even sure what year it was I was into the Steelers, but Myron Cope, who was the iconic voice of the Steelers, much like Mitch Holthus would be the voice of the Chiefs. But anyhow, You're 291st person taken, 11th round, 12th round. You're kind of a camp body. You're not expected to make the team, quite honestly, and understandably so. So the Steelers, I was told, had a little bit of tradition that they would let Myron Cope take the 11th and 12th round picks. So I got the opportunity, but I wasn't even picked by the coaches. Now I think they did have some input into it because they had lost games. They lost a chance to get to the playoffs the year before because of a bad snap. So that was on the radar. But all the same, Myron took me aside one time at one of his golf tournaments and told me that.
So Myron Cope obviously was a famous guy who actually played a part in inventing the Steelers' terrible towel, which I see over your shoulder. I love that. So you must have talked to Myron a time or two after you joined the Steelers. What was that like?
You know what? He took a lot of pride in me because of the fact that I was a choice that had made it, and then I was making a difference. And then also, I think he had fun with it too. At Pittsburgh State, we're the Gorillas. The Gorillas is the only mascot in the U.S. Or Pittsburgh State is the only one that has the Gorillas mascot. So he was on the radio and he would say, and of course everybody always goes Gammons instead of Gammon. Fortunately there's only one of me, but he would always say, and Gorilla Gammon's out onto the field to snap either for field goals or punts, and he had a good time with it, and he was good to me.
And did you guys develop a friendship over time?
We really did. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not like he went out of his way, but I appreciated it. And I was only there 4 years, but it was 4 great years in Pittsburgh. That's a special place. It's a family-run organization.
Have you ever heard of anyone else besides the
fact
Steelers
that I got to
round?
play with the Chiefs also, and the Hunts, another family-run organization, top to bottom, left to right is just aces. Is very fortunate.
That's terrific. Have you ever heard of anyone else besides other than the Steelers' late round draft pick being selected for the NFL draft the way you were chosen?
No, I haven't. And now that I think about it, and that being said, and of course now there's only 7 rounds, so I'd be the equivalent of a free agent. But no, I never did hear anything about that. But I'm sure when you got to round 9, round 10, 11, 12, there wasn't as much thought that had to be put into it. And probably at times, I bet head coaches probably let position coaches probably have maybe more input into it than they would have in the earlier rounds.
So clearly long snappers are a special breed. People think of punters and kickers as being specialists, but the long snapper really is the specialist among specialists. What's the story behind you becoming that?
You know what? Yeah, it's interesting. Number one, we are kind of the specialist behind the specialist, and hopefully make the job of the kicker and the punter and the holder easier. But for me, as a sophomore in the spring ball at Pittsburgh State University, I was kind of curious how the ball rotated out of the hands. I wasn't a long snapper, and I was messing around before practice, Chris. And a coach saw me, realized I could do it better than anybody they had, and came over and let me know that he wanted me to start long snapping. I let him know that I did not want to start long snapping. I was an offensive lineman. At my heaviest, I weighed 310 pounds. So all offensive linemen are allergic to running. And actually, at 310 pounds, if it wasn't bolted down, I was eating it trying to stay heavy. So I didn't want any part of it. But I'm a team player, and they kept after me. And, again, if I don't listen to somebody identifying a strength in me that I didn't even see myself, and that I wanted to have no part of, then we wouldn't be talking today. I wouldn't have had the chance to talk to thousands upon thousands of people that I have over my lifetime, and that the thousands that I'm going to speak to before I leave this place. And so, very fortunate. And if that's not a reason, an example to pay attention to what others see in you, then I don't know what is. And quite honestly, it's a good lesson to look at others and see what you see in them as well.
There weren't always long snappers, or at least not long snapping specialists in the NFL. When did the art or science of long snapping come along, and how did it evolve to the point it is in today's game?
Well, nowadays there's a long snapper on every team, and it's a specialty position, just like punter and kicker. When I came in, that was not the case. There were a couple guys who were kind of just long snappers, but they were playing offensive line as well. And really that's what happened with me, because I was, like I said, I was an offensive lineman, and they thought I could be a backup and help out that way. And I probably could a little bit and did at times. But I did help usher in the age of, when I came in, there was no just long snapper on the roster on the flip card when they do everything before the games. And then when I left, every single one had one. And I'm proud of that. I think I helped usher that in.
What unique skills or techniques are essential for the position, and what are the biggest challenges that a long snapper faces?
Well, I don't think you can have an ego because my my motto is, as a long snapper, was snap ball, get crap knocked out of you. So you got your head between your legs, and they've got a running start at you there, and you got to snap the ball first before you do anything else. So I think that's it. Having a resilient attitude of understanding. Quite honestly, for me, I'd rather them destroy me than try to go around me. Because if they try to go around me, they might get to the kick and block it. But if they use me as a speed bump, they're not getting there. But again, just understanding that it's important, and that quite honestly, the people on your team, the coaches, they appreciate it. But honestly, I mean, with the Chiefs that I'm around every day, I mean, they're not coming. If it's multiple choice, and are you coming to see A, Patrick Mahomes, B, Travis Kelce, C, Kendall Gammon, or D, Taylor Swift? It's never C. It's never going to be C. It's probably D, quite honestly, or A and B, but it's never C. So it's one of those things that just because people don't see it and appreciate it outwardly, it is appreciated by the people who mattered. And quite honestly, if you don't do it the right way, then people definitely understand who you are and what's going on, and that would be no fun.
You mentioned a moment ago that you've got your head down, you're snapping the ball, they've got a running start coming at you. How do you handle that mentally, play after play, knowing, to your point, you can't see what's coming, but you know that they're coming for you?
I think it's, control the controllable, expect the expected. I know I'm going to get the crap knocked out of me, and it's within the rules. And if I was a coach, I always said it, I would have destroyed the long snapper each and every time, even if he was almost perfect each and every time. And that's what I was able to do for 15 years. I would destroy him just to try to get in their head. So it was what it was. And then control the controllable, which is, for me, every time I went up to get ready to snap, be it field goal or mostly punts also, which is, snap, block, tackle. I mean, tackle is third, block is second. First and foremost, you got to get the snap back there. If you don't get the snap back there, then the other two don't matter. And then always understanding that, there is no perfection. Consistency is perfection with what I did. So as long as you're consistent and the people who count on you know that you're going to get the ball back there for them, that breeds confidence with them.
So obviously you have to be very accurate in snapping the ball. How do you develop and maintain your concentration and accuracy under such intense pressure?
You know what? It's what the job demanded. I mean, I think generally you look at something, you either step up to it or you step aside. And I never chose to step aside. You take it head on, and I think that served me well the rest of my life with a lot of other things that went on in my life. So I think it's part of the job, and you know it going in, and you can't, as I said earlier, you can't have an ego. I mean, you just got to understand this is a very important part. And just because people don't always recognize it doesn't mean it's any less important.
You mentioned a few times about how you can't have an ego. And obviously it's a team sport and there's 11 people on each side of the ball. But for the most part, ESPN talks about the quarterback, the running back, the star defensive end or linebacker, and a wide receiver. How does that weigh on everyone else on the team who has just as an important part as the star quarterback or running back or receiver?
I think they understand their roles. I think that's what life is about also, is understanding your role. And if you want a bigger role, then you go after it in no uncertain terms. But either way, you accept what you've been asked to do. If you can do better, that's great. But understanding that if you've been asked to do it and you're doing it to the best of your ability, that's what you need to do. And I think, quite honestly, on the team concept, when you're in there, especially football, you just understand that there's so many different things going on and there's so many specialties. It's funny in practice, all the guys want to come over and snap the ball and have fun with it. And then they snap it and it's just awful and they can't do it. And they're like, oh man, okay. And that gives them kind of a newfound respect for it as well. So I just think it's being aware of every position has its strengths and weaknesses, and different people deal with it different ways.
And they're trying to snap it and they can't snap it. And that's without a 250-pound linebacker coming at them.
Exactly right.
So every down that you're snapping the ball obviously must be a high pressure situation. But was there a particularly high pressure situation you faced during a game?
Yes and no, because the fact is, you remember Hoosiers when they get to the final game, and beforehand, Gene Hackman has the little guy get up on on the shoulders and measure the rim, and it's 10 foot. And he said, you know what, that's the same height that it is back in our little gym. And I bring that up because a game-winning field goal or a field goal on the first drive of the game, it's still 8 yards. It's still 3.5 revolutions. It's still the same thing. And that's what I adopted for everything. And I think when you have that mindset and don't place too much important or more importance on it than it is, I mean, everybody else can do that. All you got to do is do your job. I looked at it that way all the time. And then I think I had a pretty good ability for I think it was for Love of the Game, Kevin Costner, when he was pitching. I remember watching that way back when, I don't remember, but when he was out there and he was just like, clear the mechanism. And all of a sudden, the noise would go away and he just would focus in. And I would literally say that lots of times. And I was able to just block everything out, 77,000 screaming at the world's loudest outdoor stadium, Arrowhead, 142.2 decibels. And when you can just focus and all of a sudden it goes away and you just go after your job and do it, I think that's what the job demanded for me, to do it the best that I could.
I know you said that with the exception of the punter or kicker, you were probably the worst athlete on the field when you were out there. And I love you said that's pretty funny. But were you also the most important? Because if the snap doesn't get where it's supposed to go, the whole play is a failure. What's the moral of the story or the lesson for the rest of us on that?
Well, I think understanding, for NFL, you mentioned that the NFL average win is by 6 or less points, so by fewer than a touchdown. So the points that I'm helping be successful with or unsuccessful with could be the difference in the game. So understanding that, and understanding no matter what it is you're asked to do, if you're being asked to do it, it's for a reason. So you place the importance upon it. And I think when you do that, don't give it any more or less importance, but just do your job. I think in my instance, anyhow, it served me well, and I think it serves others well. When I talk to corporations, to folks, whatever, I talk about that a lot. Is just understand what you're asked to do and do it to the best of your ability. And you know what? That's not splitting atoms, but nobody says anything new anymore. We just simply try to make people think. We try to make people, what is it? Socrates that said, learning is remembering. And that's really what it is. We know a lot of things. We just forget them sometimes.
How important is the relationship between the long snapper, holder, and kicker? And can you just go out there and snap the ball to anyone, or do you have to have a real connection with that person?
You can go out and snap it to anybody, but to really get honed in, you want that holder to be somebody you work with all the time. Generally, it's the punter. I was kind of, I don't know, famous. I say famous, but I was very well known for saying in practices when we had times like, okay, who's ready to go get better? And we go keep taking field goal snap after field goal snap or punt snap after punt snap. And to the degree, I mean, I don't know how many 100,000 snaps I took over my career. Yet I kept going and driving at it because I never wanted to take anything for granted. But, the trust, the operation between those three is very, very important. For me, throwing the ball back there precisely so when the holder caught it, he could set it down with the laces out. And that was a big thing. And I know, most of the kickers that kicked behind me had some of their best years as far as field goal percentage. And I'm very certain that I had something to do with it. They still had to kick it, and I couldn't do that for them, but I helped them. If they knew that it was going to be there and on time, they didn't have to worry about other things. I think that inspires confidence and the ability to go about your business at a better pace, maybe.
When you and I spoke last week, you mentioned Gary Anderson coming up to you and saying laces out. Is he the first one that created that not the phrase, but just having the laces out from that style, or is that something the kickers always do?
No, well, they do now. He asked me to do it, and I was a rookie, and I was just like, oh, man, I'd never heard of this. I certainly didn't do it in college. And I remember thinking, man, how do they do it up here in the NFL? But I was just like, sure, I'll try. And it took me a couple of weeks, and I got it. And there have been a few guys who I think tried to do it and did it somewhat successfully through their career, but I don't think to the repetitions or to the to the ability that I did, which was the laces were out each and every time. And I helped usher that in, I believe. And I was told that afterwards. I didn't understand it at the time. What I understood at the time was somebody was asking me to help them do their job as good as possible by me doing something that I'd never done before. And therefore I did it. But I am proud of it. There's no doubt about it. But really, when you think about it, laces out, it's facilitating the success of others. With team success comes individual accolades. And when I sign my text, when I sign my emails, I always have laces out. I know everybody, first thing to go to is Ace Ventura, laces out, Dan. You'll want the little kicker chasing you around because he thinks you're the reason he missed the game-winning field goal. But it's about helping others be successful. Generally, you help others be successful, it's going to come your way also.
You should have T-shirts made that says that too.
I should. I agree.
Coffee mugs. I love that.
Yep.
So obviously I don't have to tell you that Pittsburgh is not Miami, and certainly in November, December, and January. Is one long snap the same as all others, or do you have to adjust your technique in response to weather?
Yes and no. Some people do. I did not. I had equal pressure on my right hand and my left hand. Right hand, if you throw right-handed, that's a power hand, but that's a power hand. The other hand is the guide hand. And so if there's equal pressure, then if there's snow, if it's too cold and the ball's slick, if it's wet, the equal pressure allows you to do it. And that's what helped me. Some snappers these days use gloves because they're sticky, and I can't imagine that working for me, but it works for plenty. So I certainly don't judge, but understanding that no matter what it was, you had to figure it out. Because quite honestly, there were times during my career where I'd get into a game or into a pregame, and I wasn't snapping as well as I normally do. And it's kind of like golf. You play the game that you brought that day. You don't work it out on the course. So some days I had to find a way to just get through the game. It wasn't beautiful. It was good enough. And it was better than a lot still, but it wasn't to the standards I wanted. But understanding that and also not panicking. I can remember Morton Anderson kicking behind me when I was with the Kansas City Chiefs. And he was just having an awful pregame. And I kind of look at myself as kind of a catcher in baseball, which is, you're helping guide the pitcher. So I'm helping with him. He and I had a good friendship. We were both the oldest guys on the team. But he's just going nuts. And he's like, Kendall, he goes, I can't kick it. It's not hitting. And I'm like, hey, Morton, you've been doing this at that point in time. I think it was 18 or 19 years for him. Said, you've been doing this a long time. Just keep going after it. No matter what happens, you get out on the field, you go through everything and you just kick. Your body will remember, your body will know. And he did. He got through the game and he was fine. And he still had to do that. But I think I helped get him in the right mindset to approach something when things weren't going perfectly. Because in life, things don't always go perfectly. And when they do, or when they go that way, how do you deal with it?
Just laces out.
There you go.
Now, I'll apologize in advance for this. As painful as it might be for you, we have to talk about Super Bowl 30, where the Cowboys beat the Steelers 27-17. And I promise I won't mention it again, but take us through your part in that game and what it was like to the AFC champs and reach the Super Bowl.
You know what is obviously a dream come true to get to a Super Bowl, especially since the year before we lost on the last play of the game to hopefully get there. So you get there, and so many things I remember. Number one, I remember warming up out there, just me and the punter before, and they're getting ready to do the coin toss, and AFC and NFC has somebody come out to represent him, a Pro Bowl player, and so Joe Namath walks by, and of course the famous QB that called the Super Bowl win and everything. And he walks by and he knows I'm the Steelers and AFC. And he just looks at me and goes, let's go get a win. And I remember thinking, no way Joe Namath just said to me, let's go get a win. I mean, we didn't, unfortunately, but still things like that. I remember being on the sideline. Vanessa Williams is singing the national anthem. And there was a couple things. Number one, I was like, she's a lot shorter than I realized. And number two, I remember telling myself, okay, it's just a game. It's still a game. I mean, it's still the 10-foot rim. It's still a 100-yard field. I mean, it's still that. So not placing too much importance on it, if that makes sense. But, really trying to just calm myself with things and understand this is still just another game.
Now, I'm betting you have a happier story about your selection to the Pro Bowl as the first long snapper chosen for the game. What was that like?
Yeah, that was amazing. I was going to pick up my boys from elementary school, And I get this call from a 412 area code, which is Pittsburgh, and I go ahead and answer it because I don't think it's junk. And on the other line, it says hello, and I said hello. He goes, Kendall, this is Coach Cower, and I was like, no, I know who it is. In my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, no, I heard you yell at me enough, and I've heard your voice enough. I know who the hell it is. I was like, yeah, I know that. What's up? And he goes, well, I just called to tell you that I'm adding you to the Pro Bowl roster, and you're going to the Pro Bowl this year. And it's funny because I'm doing it now. I told him, I said, Coach, you made me cry when you cut me, and you're making me cry again. But thank you. And this is a really special time. And I'd always taken care of my business with him in terms of when I went to the Saints or when I went to the Chiefs. So whenever we played them, he wasn't going to seek me out and say, hey, how you doing? But I sought him out. And I said, hey, thank you for bringing me into the league. I mean, obviously I didn't want to be cut and all that stuff. Nobody does. That was the first time I'd ever been told I wasn't good enough to be on a team or wasn't welcome. But I kept that relationship alive, and it was sincere. I was very thankful that he helped get me in the league. And as I look at it, if I had bad blood and either went and said something bad or not said anything at all, I don't know if he would have taken me. I don't know. So if that's not a lesson for never burn a bridge, I don't know what is. And I found out later also that he was very excited to take me and was telling people in your organization, which is really hard for me to even comprehend, but just a really cool thing.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Kendall, I understand that only about 100 people have ever played 15 years in the NFL, which is incredible, knowing how many people have played and how old the league is. The average NFL career is 3.3 years. To what do you attribute your ability to play 5 times longer than most?
I think my attention to detail. I think having a specialty that is sought after and taking it to the highest level. Arguably 5 or 6 years of my career, I was known as maybe the best long snapper in the NFL, but at the very least, the top 32. And to do that at that level, in the world, I think is something that I just believed that I could do. And I always took the stance that I tried to be so good that they couldn't afford to let me go. And, fortunately, that's what happened for 15 years. I actually chose to leave of my own accord. I was asked to play again for a 16th year. Doesn't mean I would have made it, but there's a strong chance I would have. I probably could have scratched out a couple more years, but it was 15 years. I've been doing it a long time. I was starting to feel like I liked other things and wanted to dive into other things. And I chose to go out, not bitter about either thinking that I got screwed because the coaches, didn't want me anymore or by an injury as well, whatever. Because the one thing is Father Time never loses. So eventually everybody has to stop playing. But it was very empowering for me, I think.
Well, you mentioned Father Time, and everyone has to stop playing at some point. Talking about NFL longevity, we have to talk about Tom Brady. Not only did he play 23 seasons, but he was a quarterback. You must have had tremendous respect for Tom Brady, and how do you explain his longevity?
You know what? I think he took it to that nth level also, and just very cerebral. He had great talent to throw the ball and decision making. I mean, you watch him run. He's not that great an athlete running the ball, and he would tell you as much. But I'm good friends with Mike Vrabel, who played for a while with the Steelers, and then of course with the Patriots, and then he's been a head coach around the league. And I remember interviewing him for my second book, and him just talking about the locker room with the Patriots, and of course Brady was in there, he was in there, but they just had this expectation of what you do, how you do it, and you grind, and it wasn't the most pleasant, but they go after things, and I think that's what explained what Tom Brady could do. And I think to win 7 Super Bowls obviously is something I would say would never be matched, but I'm not certain that it won't be. We've got a guy here in Kansas City who's at least trying to make a race of it. But either way, just his attention to detail, I think, was a big thing for sure.
We talk a lot about resilience and next steps forward. What did the NFL's revolving door of players going from one team to another you being cut by the Steelers and going to the New Orleans Saints teach you about resilience?
I think you've got to understand that things happen, and it's not always going to be the way you see it. But it's not about what happens to you, and we've heard this again, not splitting atoms. It's not about what happens to you. It's about how you respond to whatever happens to you. And the fact is, the one thing you know is bad things are going to happen. Everything's not good. So understand that, and how do you deal with it? I mean, I remember, at one point in time, I played 218 straight games. I was the longest non-punter or kicker, the longest active streak. And I was coming off of a punt that I just snapped in Houston. It was my 218th game. I remember I got knocked down, got up, got knocked down again. And then all of a sudden I realized that I had the worst pain that I've ever felt in my life. I didn't know what was going on, but I just kept going and trying to help. And I did help affect the play because it broke out to my right and I took the angle and everything. Well, what I found out was that I broke my leg. I found it out at halftime when we x-rayed it, but I played on it for a half. Excruciating pain. I snapped. It was kind of funny. Snap the ball, run, fall down, get back up, run, fall down, get back up. But again, when you have the attitude that no matter what happens to you, you're going to keep going, because for me, it was this. I was a teammate. People were counting on me. And just because I'm hurt, just because I had something bad happen, doesn't mean I'm not going to go out and try to do my job to the best of my ability. And I think that's the attitude I took with everything. It's the attitude I try to take now, that I believe I do. It's the attitude that I tried to, put into my two boys as well. And I think I have to a degree.
Who are your favorite coaches and teammates? And of course, we have to dish a little dirt. Which opponents could you absolutely not stand, and why?
Well, favorite coaches, very fond of Coach Cowher, just because of how he treated me and really the way he thickened my skin my rookie year. He was hard on me. I mean, I didn't like him a lot my rookie year, but I liked him afterwards because he thickened my skin and you really can't get to me anymore. But, I was fortunate. I played for Ditka. I played for Vermeil. I played for Cowher. Then, of course, the first 7 years of Andy Reid's career, I broadcast as well. So being around these guys that are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, or will be on the first ballot, of course, for Andy. But I forgot where I was going with that, and this is the tangent I lose sometimes. But remind me what I was talking about, or what you asked.
Who are your favorite coaches?
Probably. I don't know. My favorite coach was really Bobby April, who was a special teams coach, 2 years in 2 years in Pittsburgh and 4 years in New Orleans. So spent a lot of time with him, and he really pushed me to do some things that I'd never done before and take my game to a higher level. So certainly that. As far as players that I didn't like or playing against, whoever was over me that was going to knock the crap out of me, quite honestly. The list is long and pretty distinguished, quite honestly. So it is what it is. And then as far as, probably teams you don't like, probably the Raiders to a degree, being in the Kansas City Chiefs, or when I was with the Steelers, it was, the Cleveland Browns. And of course, when I was with the Saints, it was everybody. But because those were kind of my character building years, Chris, if you get what I'm throwing down there. But just part of it.
Love that. Love the candidness. Thank you. So there's now what is described as, quote, very, very high level talk between the NFL and NFL Players Association about adding an 18th regular season game. That would move the Super Bowl out to the 3-day President's Day weekend. What are your thoughts on 18-game regular season games, and what's that going to mean for the wear and tear on players?
No question it's going to happen. I've been talking about this for probably 4 or 5 years, and it's in the works. They had to get to 17 first, and they have. They will get to 18. Super Bowl Sunday is already a holiday, and the number of people that call in sick on Monday is probably quite high, so they might as well get there anyhow. And I do think they're headed there. Does it take a toll on the players? Yes, it does, because it's another game. There's no doubt about that. But I think also you might get an extra bye week. I don't know how that would work. That would be nice, because I think eventually you're going to see every team play. I'm certain you're going to see every team play an international game, and then they have the bye after that. Because as I always say, the NFL's motto is, I don't want the world, I just want your hat. I mean, they're looking to expand, and this is part of it. And really the only way to grow revenues in a significant way at this point in time is to have another game. And when you have another game, that's huge. So it's going to happen, even if it is at the expense of the players a little bit. But That being said, when it comes down to it, even before they went to 17 games, there was a lot of talk about, well, we can't go from 16 to 17. That's simply too much. And well, we're here now. And then 17 to 18, it happens. There's no doubt about it. And even with the fact that they added the extra playoff game because of it, how they did things here recently, that's huge as well. I mean, when you look at the numbers that the NFL is doing, it is staggering. It's impressive too.
It's beyond staggering. And the thought
It
that
really
they were
is.
up until I think about 9 years ago, they were technically a nonprofit at $200 billion a year in revenue. I mean, come on, Roger. So we don't call people out. Sorry about that. Maybe we do. We're going into our fourth year with Next Steps Forward. And to my knowledge, in almost 200 episodes, I've never had a juggler as a guest. How'd you get into juggling?
I'm not surprised. How did I get into juggling? I had a couple cousins. When I was in the 8th grade, I had some cousins. They were older than me. They were juggling clubs, and I thought it looked cool. I lived on a farm, and when they left, I didn't have the clubs, obviously, but I went and got a 2x2 pole. I cut it into 18-inch strips, 3 of them. I put it in a vice grip. I got a draw knife, and I drew a handle round, carved it. Spray painted it black, put duct tape on the handles because everybody knows on a farm you have duct tape for whatever you need to keep together. And I made my own juggling clubs, and I learned to juggle clubs before balls, only because that's the only thing I'd ever seen. And I thought it was pretty cool. And it's kind of funny that when I tried to learn to juggle balls, it was difficult for me, which made zero sense if you think about it. But again, that kind of speaks to the fact of, sometimes if you don't know the limitations or you don't know the expectations of what is supposed to be hard or not supposed to be hard, then maybe it's not. Maybe we make things up in our mind. And the fact that I was not inhibited, I was just like, okay, I'm going to learn to do this. And I went after it. It happened. But that's how I learned to juggle. Became pretty accomplished. I used to be able to juggle 7 objects at one point in time, can juggle 5 still. Fire, rings, clubs, balls, bowling balls, you name it. I've competed at the International Juggling Association. They have a convention each and every year. I competed in Atlanta in the juniors division when I was 17, I think, and got 4th place. And how I got into Ringling Brothers was, of course, everybody on the team knew that I juggled, and also our PR staff. And so Ringling Brothers came to town in Kansas City one time, and I guess they called and said, would you have somebody that would want to come and see the circus and maybe, do a PR move. We'll give them tickets and whatever. And I think the PR team with the Chiefs about broke their ankles trying to get down and tell me that they wanted me to come to the circus and juggle. And of course, believe it or not, and we didn't talk about this off air, but believe it or not, when they asked me if I wanted to go there and juggle with the clowns, my first question was, can I ride the elephants also? But this is not the same, and the answer was no, but this was not the same old, he doesn't get to ride the elephants story, because I did at least get to talk with the boss clown, who was a fifth generation Hungarian juggler. This is what he did. And of course, he had all the other clowns there. And after him, I was the best juggler there. And so he invited me to be part of it. And I juggled center ring. And even all the other clowns, would sit around or they got into it. And I'm not disparaging them. They were clowns. It is what it is. And, if that's not a unique story, I don't know what is, but it's fabulous. I've got the pictures and I use it when I speak, and I'm juggling with the Hungarian clown and another one. Of course, I always make sure people know that I'm the one on the right for all the smartasses who are trying to figure out which clown I am. But I don't know. You got to have fun with it.
You were definitely the first juggler we've had, and certainly the first juggler from Ringling Brothers Circus. So hopefully next time you can ride the elephant. Let me know if we can make some phone calls on your behalf.
If only.
It's amazing she even thought to ask that. That's fantastic. I love that. So sticking with juggling, you said that you use juggling as a Zen or meditation technique. How does juggling transport you to a state of peacefulness for a metaphor for life?
You know what? I think, our life, we have our auto thoughts, which just come into our head, and I mean, it's been said in a lot of books that, that voice is the narrator or the interpreter. And often over thousands of years, our brain is there to protect us. And so it can be cautious or it can be negative. So understanding that our thoughts may go that way can be difficult. So I think with the juggling, learning to concentrate wholly and completely on something going on. I mean, 3 is easy for me to juggle. 5 is not too hard also. When I was juggling 7, and I could only do it for maybe 21 throws, you really had to be really into it. But what I'm getting at is being completely into something where you're not thinking about other things. And that's what really mindfulness is being able to concentrate on the moment. I do a daily gratitude journal, and my one of my mantras is always be in the moment and don't be anxious about the future. And then another one is I matter, I make a difference, and I am enough. And this comes from a lot of different therapies and things I've done. But again, just being able to concentrate on one thing as opposed to your mind just going all over the place. For me, anyhow, that becomes a bit of a zen. I mean, it could be playing golf if you can fully concentrate on that or whatever it is. But for me, just juggling and having a good time. And then, teaching others too is fun also. But to back to your question, it's just something that allows me to try to have a single thought with nothing else going on to the left or the right.
You mentioned your journaling. You've written 2 books, both are about leadership, but they have very different themes. Describe each of them, and especially how can people in our audience find your books?
Okay, well, you can go to kendallgammon.com and you can go get them from there. And oftentimes people want the hard copy, which is fine. You can go get that. My second book, quite honestly, you can download a PDF version if you like. But the first one, Leadership Lessons from the Best of the NFL. Well, wait a minute. The first one was a motivational, inspirational. And that one, I told my story, unfortunately, about, my upbringing as a kid. And from, age 10 to 16, I was abused by my mom, both physically and emotionally. I was food insecure at times. I was very good at making sure that nobody knew about any of that stuff. But it caught up to me later on in my life. But that's what I talked about in the first one, along with some other things as well. Maybe you'll draw it out of me. And the second one was Game Plan, Leadership Lessons from the Best of the NFL. And, having played around a lot of Pro Bowl or future Hall of Famers and coached by Hall of Fame coaches and whatnot, I just felt like there's a lot of information that I was getting. And so I would take notes, and I took notes incessantly, and I just decided that I wanted to do something with it. And, I was starting to speak as well. Of course, they always say the best business card you can have as a speaker is to have a book. So I figured, well, it'd be even better to have 2. So that's what I did. And, I'm not going to retire on it, but you make some money. But quite honestly, the money goes back to some charity at some point from my standpoint. But if I can help somebody do something better or not do something that I did because it was detrimental or whatever, if I can help somebody in some way through my books, and that's what I wanted to do. And I feel like I have.
And the website again is kendallgammon.com. No S, Kendall Gammon.
Correct.
He's singular, not plural.
There's only one of me.
And I get that because I've had trophies and diplomas that everyone puts an S on my last name. I don't know why. I think it's because my first name ends in an S. I don't know. So there's a lot of Chris Meeks things out there, so I totally get that.
Right.
Back to your football days, you mentioned earlier you've played for 3 Hall of Fame coaches, and obviously Andy Reid will be the 4th when he retires. Most players don't get to play for 1 Hall of Fame coach, let alone 4. And that ranks right there with your 15 years in the league. Did you appreciate the depth of their knowledge and ability when you're playing for them?
I did Ditka to a degree because he was already a legend when he came back and started coaching for the Saints. Vermeil, because he had won a Super Bowl at St. Louis, so I recognize that one. Cowher, my first 4 years at the Steelers were his first 4 years as a head coach at 34 years old. In fact, first time he came in to a meeting when I came there after the draft for the rookie minicamp, he came in and started talking, and I was just kind of looking around, and then I was like, wait, this is the head coach. I haven't seen a picture of him. And I don't know why I hadn't heard of him because he was the former Chiefs defensive coordinator. But all the same, so him, not as much. And then of course, Andy, yes and no. I mean, he had been at Philadelphia for a long time, taken his team to AFC or the NFC championship several times, Super Bowl once, although they lost. But either way, I recognize this at least, Chris, which was, you're a head coach in the NFL. You've done some things. You understand what's going on. And of course, Cowher had played in the league. Vermeil had coached high level in the league. Ditka had played in the league. So, yeah, I recognized it to a degree, but I just knew also that uh, there was a lot to learn from that. And that's why I took those notes and tried to take in as much as I could.
And were there any common leadership or motivational themes you absorbed from each of them?
Yeah, I talk about this a lot, which is I always ask people, what was the goal of these four coaches? And invariably, people say win the Super Bowl, like you see this trophy behind me, or things like that. And that's true to a degree, but that's what happens when you accomplish what they're trying to do, which they're all trying to enhance and build mindset, an intentional, persistent mindset through focus, through persistence, and through resilience as well. And that's the one thing, because those four coaches could not be any more different personality wise, but they had that one thing that they're trying to create a mindset that no matter what happens, no matter whether you broke your leg coming off the line of scrimmage, or no matter if you threw an interception, no matter if you missed a kick or whatever it was, that you were going to come back and you're going to do your best, and you were never going to feel sorry for yourself. You were just going to keep moving on, because nobody plays a perfect game. As I said, consistency is perfection. So that was the things that I saw in them that I think was common.
Let's get on the personal side of your life now, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
On a somber note, a childhood friend of yours recently took his own life. You knew him for decades, and yet there's so much you've said that you didn't know about him, the struggles he was going through, because he kept those things hidden from you.
Yeah.
As men, why do we so disadvantage ourselves and even harm ourselves by not opening up in times of need when we need to be open about it?
You know what? I think we're taught as men from a young age that oftentimes you don't cry, you squeeze it in, you deal with it, be a man, things like that. And there are certainly times to do that at certain points, but not all the time. I'm a big Brene Brown fan, and she talks about being vulnerable and how important that is. And if people haven't read that, I would encourage them to. But I think it's changing a little bit. But yeah, you talk about, several years back, my best friend Scott Dennis took his life. He'd been at my house the night before to pay me back some money, and I don't think he was planning it then. I think he caught a weak moment the next day. Uh, I knew he was going through a divorce, but his work life was in place. What I didn't know is he was having a losing battle with alcohol, and that I found out only his mom knew about, who I was close with also. But I didn't understand those things until afterwards. And, I talk about that openly when I speak to people, because suicide is not Kevin Bacon in 6 degrees of separation. It's 1 degree of separation. We're too close to it, unfortunately. So I talk about it for a reason, and I think it's acceptable to talk about now. But when I juggle rings, when I'm doing some things, I juggle rings, and they're white on one side, they're red, blue, and green on the other. And I talk about perspective and the fact of, on one side, all they see is the white side. The other side, they see the colors. But if I'm looking at them, or the people in front of me are looking at them, they just see these thin lines. And what I'm talking about is, sometimes we have to get out of our own shoes to see it from a different vantage point. And as I move around with the rings and I'm juggling, the whole audience will see everything, with the exception of me, because my view never changes. And so I take that with Scott, or people in general, which is, I don't blame myself for what he did, but I wonder if I'd had perspective, if I'd had more perspective to maybe identify something. Again, I don't blame myself. I just get sad about it, because I will always wonder if I could have done something. And I don't want people to do that. So I try to talk about it openly. I do a lot of talks with a teacher in service, and then that filters down, I hope, to the kids, or oftentimes I talk to the high schoolers as well. But, this is something that has to be talked about, along with other things that I talk about. But so that's why I've with that. And I know I went on the tangent, but
Nope, that's totally fine. Tangents are what we're supposed to do here.
Yeah.
So on a much happier note, we have just a few minutes left. War Horses for Veterans. Tell us about the organization and your involvement.
That's awesome. And if you want to know more, it's WHFV.org. War Horses for Veterans. We bring in combat vets and first responders from all around the U.S. for a complimentary week of equine therapy. Deals with depression, PTSD, withdrawal from the family, through working with horses. And they learn to ride, they learn to rope, and oftentimes this is type A personalities who are used to controlling their own world. Now all of a sudden they've got a 12,000 or 1,200 pound animal that they realize they have to communicate with, because horses reflect our feelings back, and they're such intuitive animals. So we feel like we're doing something great. We're in our 10th year, and something that certainly I would encourage everybody to go take a look at. And I feel good about it. I feel like I'm making a difference with people, because I made something as benign as throwing a football between my legs important in my life because of people like that who protected my freedoms.
Amen. And what's their website again?
WHFV.org, warhorsesforveterans.org.
Kendall Gammon, 15-year NFL long snapping veteran, Pro Bowler, author of Life's a Snap and Game Plan, and certainly world-class juggler. Thank you so much for being with us today.
My sincere pleasure, Chris. I applaud you for what you're doing. Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate your time and all that you do, sir. So thank you. And thank you to our audience, which now includes people in over 50 countries, for joining us for another episode of Next Steps Forward. I'm Chris Meek. For more details on upcoming shows and guests, please follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/Chris Meek Public Figure, and on X at ChrisMeek_USA. We'll be back next Tuesday, same time, same place, with another leader from the world of business, politics, public policy, sports, or entertainment. Until then, stay safe and keep taking your next steps forward.